I thought I had found the love of my life. I made plans. I built a life. I believed she was everything I needed. But a forgotten note showed me a truth that destroyed everything I believed. I discovered in the most painful way possible that the woman I loved had someone else. This is my story. I don't want to give you a moral lesson. I just want to share what I experienced, because maybe in some way it can help you. If you've ever loved someone who betrayed you, if you've ever been left when you most believed it was forever, or if you just want to hear a story of overcoming, of rebirth, of someone who learned to love themselves even after being broken, then this video is for you. I was the kind of man who believed in happy endings, perhaps because I had never experienced one. I grew up watching my parents argue in silence, with looks that screamed louder than any fight. I swore to myself that when I found someone, I would do it differently. And I thought I had succeeded. Her name was Livia. She appeared in my life like one of those winter mornings when the sun decides to shine brighter. Unexpected, beautiful, and full of promise. We met on an ordinary day in a supermarket while we were fighting over the last tray of strawberries. She laughed. I offered. And in that simple gesture, a story was born that I believed would be my definitive one. Livia had the kind of beauty that didn't scream, but asserted itself. Dark eyes, hair tied in a careless bun, and a voice that made even banal words sound like music. She worked as a copywriter at an advertising agency, and unlike me, who was always trying to control everything, she floated through life with a lightness that disarmed me. In the first few months, it was as if we were made for each other. She listened to me attentively, laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones, and looked at me as if I was everything she needed. For a while, I believed this with all my might. We moved in together in less than a year, a small but cozy apartment. We shared the couch, the bed, the wine on Friday nights, and little by little, we also began to share silences. Nothing too loud at first. A shorter okay, a laugh that didn't come so easily, a cell phone that she started to turn upside down. Small things, but that, together, built an invisible abyss between us. At work, my colleagues talked about how love changes over time. They said that passion becomes habit, and habit becomes coexistence. I didn't want to accept that. I wanted to fight. I cooked her favorite dishes, left notes around the house, tried to rekindle what little by little seemed to be fading away. And her? She smiled. But her smile began to have something strange. Like someone smiling out of obligation. Like someone thanking someone for something they didn't ask for. The first time I felt suspicious was when she started arriving late. She said it was because of a new project at work. I believed her, because I wanted to believe, because doubting someone else also means admitting that you might be being deceived, and I wasn't ready for that. Until one random Saturday, I needed a charger. She had gone out for a coffee with her friends. I went to her backpack, where she usually kept hers, and found something I wasn't expecting. A note. Small, carefully folded, in a handwriting that wasn't hers. I read it like someone opening an old closet, knowing they'll find ghosts. Today it was hard to pretend we were just colleagues. I want you. I've always wanted you. V. My heart beat slower, then faster. Then it seemed to stop. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there staring at the note as if watching the ground give way beneath my feet. I waited for her to come back. I waited in such a silence that I could hear every tick of the kitchen clock. When she came through the door, she smiled. She was carrying flowers. She said she had thought of me when she passed by a fair and thought I would like it. For a second, I wanted to believe that everything was still real, that that note was from another life, from another person. But I knew. I put the paper in my pocket. I didn't show it. I didn't ask. I just hugged her, as if it were the last time. And maybe it already was, even without her knowing. In the following days, I began to observe with different eyes. The way she smiled when she looked at her phone, the messages she responded to quickly, even when we were in the middle of a movie. The different smell in her hair, the times that didn't match. Every little detail that I had previously overlooked now became a piece in a cruel puzzle. Anger came later, mixed with sadness, with a feeling of inadequacy. What had I done wrong? Where had I lost her? Was I too predictable? Was my love too little for someone who needed fire? But what hurt the most was remembering all the times I told her I loved her, and she would respond, "I love you too," with a quick, almost automatic kiss. Now everything seemed staged. A theater where I was the only spectator who believed in the play. I decided not to confront her yet. I wanted to understand. I wanted to see how far she would go. If she would have the courage to tell me. If she would ever look me in the eyes and confess. But what I got was the opposite. More fake smiles, more vague apologies, more promises of a future she didn't want with me. That's when I started following her, not with hate, not with madness, but with the desperation of someone who needs to see with their own eyes what they already know but don't want to accept. And it was on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock that I saw her. She was leaving a restaurant. Not alone, with him. Tall, well-dressed, with a smile that I recognized from afar. The kind of man I never was. She was holding his hand. She looked at him the way she once looked at me. And me? I stood there, without strength in my legs, with my heart crushed by a truth that already lived inside me. And even so, it hurt. It hurt as if it were new, as if it were the first stab wound. The next day, I woke up with burning eyes and a dry throat. I hadn't slept well, and when I did, I dreamed of her. Of that smile that I now knew wasn't just mine. Of the hands that had touched me yesterday and were touching someone else today. I got out of bed aimlessly. The house seemed like a strange place, full of memories that no longer fit together. Every corner had her voice, her perfume, the trace of a life that I thought was ours, but that now seemed only mine. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at my phone. The note was still in my pocket, folded the same way. Part of me wanted to throw it away, burn it, forget about it. The other part of me wanted to keep it as proof that I wasn't crazy, proof that everything I felt was justified. Livia left early that day. She said she was going to visit her parents. A lie. I knew it. And yet she said, "Go with God," as if it were true. It was strange how the pain didn't make me scream. It silenced me. It made me a ghost inside my own house. I spent the rest of the day trying to remember when everything started to fall apart. I thought back to the days when she would take a long time to respond to messages, sometimes saying she was busy. I remembered the birthdays when she seemed distant, the colder hugs, the kisses that didn't last long. And I remembered myself, trying to make up for it all with gifts, dinners, nice words. I went to her room and opened her closet. Not with anger, but with a sick desire to find something that would confirm what I already knew. I found a blouse that wasn't hers. It was a man's shirt. Too big for her small body. It smelled of a perfume that wasn't mine. And there, in front of some random fabric, I cried. It wasn't a pretty soap opera-like cry. It was a contained, choked cry, the kind of pain that you swallow until it bleeds inside. That night, I did something I never thought I would do. I got in my car and drove to the building where I had seen them leave together. I stood across the street watching. I didn't know what I was looking for, a confirmation, a miracle, that she would leave on her own and say it was all a mistake. But no, she did leave, and she left with him again. This time, they got into a car together. They laughed. She rested her head on his shoulder for a few seconds before the car drove off. And I stayed there, watching the woman I loved move on with another man. I went home and sat on the living room floor for hours, thinking about how life is made of silent choices. It chose me one day, and little by little it stopped choosing. But it never told me. The next day she came back with the same smile as always. She brought sweets, as if that would fill the hole she was digging. I took them, I thanked her, and I asked her how it had been with her parents. She told a memorized story, like someone who had lied like that before. That's when I asked, "Livia, do you love me?" She stopped. She looked at me with wide eyes as if she hadn't expected the question. It took her longer than it should have to answer. "Of course I do." "Why?" I gave a weak smile. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't say anything else, because I already knew. It wasn't love. It was guilt. It was the habit of someone who didn't have the courage to leave and so preferred to stay in the cruelest way, half here, half far away. In the days that followed, I avoided the subject, but I began to silently distance myself. I slept later. I avoided contact. She noticed. She started trying harder. She kissed me with sudden intensity, hugged me for no reason, told me she missed me, even though I was there every day. Until one night, while she was sleeping, I went into her email. I'm not proud of it, but pain turns us into versions we don't recognize. There was the proof. The messages exchanged with Vitor. There were many old messages from months ago. She said she was confused, that she felt divided, that she loved both of them differently, that with me she was home, with him she was fire. Reading that was like dying in pieces, as if each word was a stone thrown at what was left of my hope. The next day she woke up and found me sitting at the table with my cell phone in my hand. I looked at her. She looked at me, and I knew. "You read it, right?" she asked, her voice weak. I nodded. No strength to scream, no energy to confront. I just shook my head. "I was going to tell you." "When? After our wedding? When I was waiting for you at home and you were with him?" She cried. But I didn't cry with her. My tears had already dried up. I was beyond that. "Forgive me," she whispered. "Forgive what? That you chose someone else? Or that you continued to pretend you still chose me?" She didn't answer. I got up from the table and went to the bedroom. I closed the door. I didn't knock. I didn't shout. I just closed it, like someone closing a book that they already know the ending to. That night, I slept in the living room. She slept in the bedroom. And the house, which had been full of the two of us, became a minefield of silence. The next day, she didn't come to work. She didn't try to talk to me either. The silence between us was no longer uncomfortable. It was natural, like the sound of a fan that you hear for so long that you stop noticing it. I got ready in silence, put on the shirt with her scent still clinging to the fabric, and left. Not because I had any urgent commitments, but because I didn't want to breathe the same air anymore. I walked aimlessly through the city, my eyes fixed on nothing, just trying to understand how someone could love so much and still be left behind. I passed places we used to frequent, the cafe where she always ordered the same cappuccino, the movie theater where she fell asleep on my shoulder, the park where she said she wanted to grow old with me. Now all of that was the setting for a play that had ended without warning. I sat on a park bench and watched couples passing by. One held the other's hand, as if the whole world were there. And I wondered if any of them were also smiling on the outside and bleeding on the inside. I thought about calling a friend, telling her everything, venting, but I couldn't. Part of me was still trying to protect her. Part of me was still complicit in the illusion. I came home that night. She was sitting on the living room floor, hugging her knees. Her eyes were red as if she had spent the whole day immersed in her own regret. When she saw me, she didn't say anything. She just stood up slowly, picked up her bag, and went to the door. "Where are you going?" I asked, not wanting to seem like I cared, but I did. "Sleeping at a friend's house. I thought it was better." I nodded, and yet my heart ached. Because deep down I wanted her to stay, I wanted her to fight for me. But she chose to leave, and I let her. That night I walked around the house like a ghost. I touched the books we had bought together, The potted plant she swore was dying, and I insisted on watering. Everything smelled of the past. I took out my old notebook, the one I used to write in when I was younger, and tried to put into words what I was feeling. But I couldn't. I just wrote, "I lost someone who was never completely mine." I closed it and left it there, like just another thing she would never read. The next day she came back to pick up some clothes. We didn't exchange more than 3 words. She avoided looking at me, and I avoided falling apart. As she was leaving, she handed me a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a note, it was a letter. I waited for her to leave. I waited for the door to slam shut. I waited for silence to return to the apartment. Then I opened it. I know I don't deserve for you to read this, but I'm writing it. Because if I don't say it, I'll carry something that's already weighing too much on me. From the beginning, you were everything. Calm, presence, future. But at some point I started to feel lost, not because of you, never because of you. I felt incomplete, empty, and I tried to fill that with someone else, thinking it was our love's fault. It wasn't. It was my fault. You didn't fail. I just didn't know how to be whole. I'm sorry. L. I read the letter about 10 times. I looked between the lines, for explanations, for clues. But all I found was confirmation of what I already knew. Sometimes betrayal comes not from hatred, but from confusion. And yet, it hurts just the same. In the following days, I tried to get back into my routine. Work, grocery shopping, attempts at forced smiles for my neighbors. But the house was a constant reminder. I decided to move, not to another city, but to another home. I packed up the photos, donated the furniture we had chosen together, and found a new apartment, small and without history. It was what I needed, a fresh start without memories. The move happened on a Saturday. While I was packing the last of my books, I found an envelope with her name on it. It was our travel plan to Italy, the one she had wanted to do when we completed 5 years together. I scribbled on it, "We're not going anymore," and threw it in the trash. The new apartment was simple. 1 bedroom, 1 living room, and no memory of her. I slept the first night on the floor with the mattress still rolled up. But for the first time in a long time, I slept, without nightmares, without waking up with my heart in pieces. The days went by. I still missed home, but it hurt less. I started to rediscover little pieces of myself. I signed up for a photography course. I went back to running in the park. I reconnected with old friends. And one Sunday morning, in the middle of a market, I saw a woman trying to reach a tray of strawberries. I smiled. The scene seemed too familiar. But I didn't go any closer. I just watched, took a deep breath, and moved on. Because at that moment, I understood. Life doesn't wait for us to be ready. It just goes on, with or without the people who swore to stay. A few weeks later, a notification appeared on my phone. It was an email. The sender, Livia. For a second, I hesitated. I thought about deleting it without reading it, about moving on with my life without reopening any more wounds. But curiosity, or perhaps the remaining feelings that were still hidden inside me, got the better of me. I opened it. She said she had resigned from the agency, that she had left the apartment where she and Vita were living together, and that she was trying to find herself again. She said, in harsh words, that this new love was not as full of promise as she had imagined. That Vita was everything she thought she wanted, but not what she needed. And in the end, he left her too. I read everything calmly, without anger, without compassion, just with the serenity of someone who no longer expected anything. At the end of the text, a short sentence. "If you ever want to talk, I will be here." I closed my phone and didn't answer, because talking was no longer necessary. What needed to be said had already been said, and what was felt, only I knew that. Life went on, but in a different way. It was like walking with a scar that still hurts on rainy days. The betrayal wasn't just the loss of someone, it was the loss of an idea, of a dream that we had built together and that she had let slip away. One day I met Mariana again, an old friend from college. She was different, more mature, with that look of someone who had already faced her own storms. We talked for hours, and before I knew it, I was smiling for real. Our reunion turned into friendship, and the friendship began to take on the color of something more. I hesitated. I was afraid to trust again. I was afraid to give my world to someone else to keep. But Mariana was different. She didn't promise the impossible. She didn't say that we would be together forever. She was just there, present, real. One day, I told her everything I had experienced with Livia. Not because I wanted to compare, but because I needed to be honest. Mariana listened without interrupting. In the end, she simply said, "You are not what they made you, and if you want to try, I won't promise you perfection, but I will promise you the truth." Those words broke me, because that was exactly what I needed. Not someone to heal me, but someone who wouldn't hurt me anymore. Months passed. Mariana and I built something simple, beautiful, based on sincerity and care. There were still shadows, of course. There were still days when I woke up with the weight of the past. But now, I had something to lean on. One day, I went to the same supermarket where it all started with Livia. I saw a tray of strawberries. I laughed to myself. I picked them up. When I got home, I washed them and put them on a plate. Mariana appeared in the kitchen, smiled, picked one up and said, "Strawberry, how romantic." And in that simple gesture, I felt that perhaps life was beginning a new cycle, without rushing, without guarantees, but with truth. One night, Mariana fell asleep on the couch, and I watched her serene face. I took a piece of paper and wrote something that had been growing inside me for a long time. It's not about finding someone who fills a void. It's about finding someone who wants to build with you, even though they know you come with cracks. I left the note on her bedside table. The next day, when she woke up, she read it and smiled with moist eyes. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me tightly. At that moment, I knew for sure that despite everything, I was not lost. I was broken, yes. I was betrayed, yes. But there was still a heart inside me willing to try again. Sometime later, on a normal afternoon, I received an unexpected message. It was from an unknown number, but I knew who it was from before I even opened it. "I'm in town. Can we talk?" It was Livia. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the screen, remembering everything I had experienced, everything I had endured. I wondered what she wanted now, what was left to say. I remained silent for 2 days. And then, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps out of a remnant of something that had once been love, I replied, "Maybe. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. at Café Mirante." Mariana knew. I didn't hide it. I said I needed it, not for her, but for me. To close the cycle. To bury, once and for all, what still scratched me inside from time to time. She nodded. Not with jealousy, but with the understanding of someone who trusts. On the appointed day, I arrived 10 minutes early. I ordered a coffee. Time seemed to pass slowly. Each second was a step towards a past that I swore I had left behind. When Livia walked in, I didn't recognize her right away. She was thinner, her eyes were deeper. The glow that had once surrounded her seemed to have disappeared. "Hi," she said, her voice low. "Hi." He sat down in front of me and took a while to say anything. He fidgeted with his spoon and avoided my gaze, until he finally spoke. "Thank you for coming. I didn't know if I should look for you, but I had to." I nodded. I was in no hurry, no resentment. I just wanted to listen. "I messed up, I know that. And I'm not here to ask for you back or to fix anything. I just wanted to tell you that I understood. I understood everything you were, everything I lost." I remained silent. She continued, "When we lose someone like you, it takes a while to understand. We think we can have everything, that we can play with other people's feelings without consequences. But life takes its toll, and it took its toll on me. He paused, his eyes filled with tears. I thought I wanted intensity, but what I needed was peace. And you were my peace. And why didn't you stay? I asked. She took a deep breath. Because I was broken, and you offered me what I didn't yet know how to receive. This phrase kept ringing in my head. Sometimes we love someone so much that we forget that not everyone knows how to be loved. I hope you're okay now, she said. I am. With someone. I nodded. A small smile escaped. She noticed and smiled too. A sad smile, but sincere. Take care of her. I take care of her. And she takes care of me. We said goodbye with a brief hug. And in that gesture, I let everything go. The pain, the anger, the guilt, the questions. Nothing was left. Just a past that no longer defined me. I came home and found Mariana reading on the couch. She looked at me and welcomed me with a silent smile. I sat down next to her. I didn't tell her the details. I just said, I closed a door. She hugged me. And there, in the warmth of her embrace, I realized I was free. Finally. Over time, our life together began to take shape. Simple, beautiful, real. Not perfect, but honest. We bought a new coffee maker, a bigger couch, and planned little trips. Nothing grand. But everything was done with care, with a quiet love, the kind that doesn't burn, but warms. One Sunday morning, while we were having coffee, Mariana looked at me and said, Have you ever thought about writing about all this? Your story could help other people. I thought for a few seconds. Maybe she was right. Maybe turning pain into words was a way of healing. And that same day, I sat down at the computer and wrote the first sentence. When I discovered the truth, it was too late. The woman I loved had another man. But that was when I began to truly love myself. The text flowed as if it had been ready inside me for a long time. I wrote nonstop for hours, reliving every detail, every piercing silence. Every night I slept with someone by my side, but with loneliness taking up all the space in the bed. And the more I wrote, the less it hurt. It was as if, with each word, I was cleaning a corner of my soul, removing the stains of a love that had been lost along the way. Mariana would come to the office door from time to time, ask if I wanted a cup of tea, or just put her hand on my shoulder. She understood that I was not reliving to suffer, but to free myself. She didn't question me. She didn't ask me to stop. She just stayed there, present. When I finished the last paragraph, I felt a strange weight on my chest. It wasn't sadness. It was a kind of peace I had never felt before. A relief. The knowledge that the story was finally over and that the protagonist wasn't her. It was me. I sent the text to a literary blog I used to follow, without any pretense, without expecting a response. It was more an act of courage than an attempt to reach someone. But 2 weeks later, I received an email from the publisher. They wanted to publish it. They said that the raw sincerity of my story had touched a lot of people. That caught me off guard. I never imagined myself being read, especially with such a personal, exposed story. But I accepted it, because it wasn't just my pain anymore. It was something that could make other people understand that yes, it is possible to move on. Even after being betrayed, even after being left. The book came out in digital format, and in a short time, it began to gain readers. Comments, messages, thanks. People said they felt the same way, that they cried the same tears, that somehow my story had given them the strength to start over. It was strange to be recognized for this. Some saw me as the man who was betrayed and rebuilt himself. But I wanted more than that. I didn't want to be just the pain I overcame. I wanted to be the man who learned from it. Mariana watched everything with a proud gleam in her eyes. One day, she took me out to dinner and, in the middle of the restaurant, she handed me a small box. Inside was a keychain with the phrase, "The love that remained." She looked at me and said, "Because what matters is not who left. It's who stayed when everything fell apart." I held her hand tightly. And in that moment I understood that maybe true love is exactly that. Someone who chooses to stay, even though they know you have scars. A month later, I was invited to give a short talk at a bookstore. It was a meeting for readers. I sat on a simple chair in front of 20, maybe 30 people. I looked each of them in the eye. I told my story, not to play the victim, but to show that sometimes pain is just the beginning of something new. After the speech, a woman came up to me. She was about 50 years old. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying all the time. She said, "Yesterday, I found out that my husband has another woman. I almost didn't come today, but listening to you made me want to get out of bed tomorrow. Thank you." I embraced that woman as if she were part of my own story, because in a way she was. All of us, at some point, are betrayed, whether by love, by a promise, by ourselves. The difference is what we do after that. The evening ended with Mariana waiting for me outside the bookstore. When she saw me, she smiled. We walked together to the car. Comfortable silence. And for the first time, I felt that my life was no longer a healing wound. It was a new path, built on ruins, but with solid bricks. Before going to sleep, I opened my old notebook, the one where I had only written one sentence months ago. And right below I wrote, "But when the ground collapsed, I learned to fly." The morning after the talk, I woke up to too many notifications on my phone. Messages from strangers, people sharing my text, invitations to be interviewed on podcasts, and even on a local radio show. It was as if my pain had suddenly been given a voice by those who had never had the courage to talk about theirs. But what touched me most was a simple letter, with no identified sender, delivered to the reception desk of my building. The envelope was beige, unmarked, carefully folded. I opened it. "I'm not writing to ask you for anything. I just want to tell you that I read every line of what you wrote, that I cried as if it were my story, and that when I finished, I looked in the mirror and for the first time I saw myself. I saw myself with courage. Thank you for that. You don't know it, but you saved someone. M." That letter took my breath away. Not because of the obvious emotion, but because it made me understand something that took me a long time to realize. All of that, all the pain, had not been in vain. If it served to save just one person, then it was worth it. Over time, my life found a new normal. Mariana and I made leisurely plans, a short trip at the end of the year, maybe adopting a dog, simple but real things. I started writing more. Not just about what I experienced, but about what I learned. Love stopped being a wound and became raw material. One day she asked me, "Do you think you still think about her?" I took a while to answer. Not because the answer was difficult, but because I wanted to be fair. I think so. Sometimes when I hear a song, when I pass by a place, but not with pain, I think with acceptance, like someone who remembers a book they've already read, knows the ending, and understands that it's not worth rereading. She nodded, and that was enough. She didn't ask for anything else. One Saturday afternoon, while we were sorting through boxes of old things to donate, I found a photo frame at the bottom of a drawer. In it was a photo of me and Livia from a summer when we seemed happy. Mariana looked at it. She didn't take it from my hand. She didn't ask anything. She just picked up the frame, gently removed the photo and put it in the donation envelope. "How about making room for new memories?" she said. And we smiled. Because that was it. We don't forget the past by throwing it away, but by putting other things in its place. Over time, Mariana and I learned to laugh, even at what seemed impossible. She said I was an old romantic trapped in a modern body. I said she was my calm after the storm. And so we went on, without rushing, without empty promises. Sometimes I get new messages from readers. Some tell me they've ended toxic relationships. Others say they've decided to forgive. Others say they've found love again. And they all remind me of who I was and who I've become. One rainy afternoon, while I was writing in my notebook, Mariana arrived with some news. I got an offer for us to live abroad for a while, just 6 months. Remote work, a small town, beach, silence. It took me by surprise, but I didn't hesitate. Life has taught me that when something good comes along, we can't wait for it to pass. Let's go. And we went to a city where no one knew my story, where love had no shadow, only sun. On the first day in that rented house by the sea, I placed a blank sheet of paper on the table, and I wrote, Chapter 1, The Man Who Almost Gave Up on Love, and Loved Harder When He Had the Chance. The routine in that small town was everything I didn't know I needed. The silence wasn't empty, it was freedom. The beach was always there, like a warm embrace after years of emotional winter. Mariana and I found beauty in the details. The smell of breakfast made together, the barefoot walks on the sand at dusk, the unhurried conversations that happened naturally, without the obligation to fill time. It was there that I understood, once and for all, what true love was. It wasn't about unbridled intensity or grand declarations. It was about waking up next to someone and knowing that you no longer need to be afraid. It was about being able to be vulnerable without fear of being punished for it. One day, while we were shopping at a local grocery store, Mariana pointed to a bookstall and laughed. One of the copies was mine. When I discovered the truth, was now on shelves in places I never imagined it would end up. She picked up the book, turned to the back, read my mini biography and said, "Did you know you were famous? Famous for being a cuckold?" I joked. She laughed out loud, that free laugh that I loved. Famous for having turned things around, for having become hope for many people. That same afternoon, I received an email from a larger publisher. They wanted to release a new edition of the book with previously unpublished excerpts and perhaps expand it into a series of chronicles. They offered me complete freedom to write whatever I wanted, and for the first time I had no doubts. I said yes. But I knew I didn't want to just revisit my old pain. I wanted to write about what came after, about rebuilding, about starting over. And so, a new project emerged. After the Truth, When Love Arrives Without Fanfare. It was in this new book that I told about Mariana, about the shared coffees, the sincere looks, the ordinary days that by her side became extraordinary. Over time, we received visits from friends, walked through neighboring villages, and planted a small garden in the backyard of our rented house. Mariana picked basil in the morning and asked me to write less and live more, and I obeyed, laughing. One particularly clear night, we were sitting in the backyard, a glass of wine in our hands, and our breathing slowed down. Mariana looked at me and said, "Did you realize that if Livia hadn't left, we might never have met?" I was silent for a few seconds. That was true. Sometimes pain is just the necessary path to the right destination. "She destroyed me," I replied. "But you were the one who rebuilt me patiently, like someone who slowly glues together the pieces of a vase, accepting the cracks as part of the beauty." She didn't answer. She just held my hand tightly. Time passed. We finished our season in that city. We returned to ours, but we returned different. I had new projects, she had new dreams. We bought a bigger apartment, with space for everything we still wanted to experience, and we lived, with intensity, yes, but with peace. At the launch of the new book, between autographs and photos, I saw a familiar face in the distance. It was Livia. The years had passed for her too. Her eyes no longer sought excuses or tears, only tranquility. She waved from afar, respectfully. I waved back. We didn't speak. It wasn't necessary. The past, finally, was at peace. After that night, I realized that it's not just about getting over it. It's about growing, understanding that the right love doesn't scream, doesn't hurt, doesn't demand sacrifices that tear you apart. The right love builds in silence, with actions, with presence, with respect. And today, looking back, I don't wish it had been any different, because it was that pain that brought me here, to Mariana, to myself. Maybe the happy ending isn't the one where everything works out with the person you thought you loved. Maybe the happy ending is the one where you learn to love yourself enough to recognize when someone really loves you. And that's what I learned. By the time I found out the truth, it was too late. But it's never too late to start over, with someone who sees you whole, even after everything. If you've ever been through something like this or know someone who needs to hear this, please share it. Subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories of overcoming and real life. Leave your comment at the end. Do you believe it is possible to start over after a betrayal?